Hunley has. I don't know who that son of a bitch thinks he is.
Welcome to Laid Back Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs.
No. Piers Morgan is doing the hide my boner lean. That's what he's doing. Look at him.
I think this is actually the first time that a billionaire cut safety standards, and it was the billionaire themselves that died.
And that's what made Polieres. I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name.
Polieres.
I'm board certified criminal trial law in Florida. I'm your man. Of course, you have to compensate me.
Discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
I did this way before him. I had the big brain panel before Eric Hunley even existed.
All right. Welcome to the other legal stream that's here every Friday, but a little bit thin on the ground with the lawyers today. I'm very fortunate to have you guys here. There's this other thing going on. What do you guys call it? Because it's not a trial. Is it a hearing?
Evidentiary hearing.
Okay, evidentiary hearing. And it's kind of twisted because the defense is sort of the prosecutors. The prosecutors are sort of the defense, but yet it's very, very confusing. And even some of that on the direct exam versus treating her as a hostile witness, Fannie Willis, who she's very hostile as a witness at one point yesterday. Have you guys been watching that at all?
Definitely. Yeah, I made some videos on it too.
Where's my cash hoard at?
Yeah.
What did you say? What
exactly.
word? And he's like, no. Give him credit. He said, your cash hoard, HORDE. Yes. But he did deliberately pick it. It was so
I
obvious.
think so too.
He's right there with the spelling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But currently, we'll have a little bit of a lawception going on here. There's our friend Nate the lawyer, who is covering at the moment with her illustrious father. Now, I was just talking.
He's got an interesting past.
Yeah, exactly where I was going. I was just talking beforehand because I forgot about the fact he was a senior level Black Panther. And after realizing that, I thought, you know what? There's a high level of probability that Fannie Willis actually told the truth when she said her father said to keep piles of cash around the house.
Yes.
That's my opinion, but there's a certain company in his past that make me consider, okay, perhaps that's true. As Mark Pugner says, Pop is as bad as Fannie. I keep saying Fannie. I told my wife about it. She said, Fannie is funny, so say Fannie. But Pop probably is as bad or was even worse than that. But she's not super concerned about her dad if you looked at the testimony, because what was it she said? She had to move out of her house because she was under dire threats.
Yes.
However, dad can stay.
Well,
and daughter can stay. Didn't she testify that daughter stayed there too during that same time period?
I don't know. That was very confusing because she was filibustering, so she didn't quite answer that one. There was so much that she did not answer. The only lawyer that I felt, and I'm not trying to pick on the first lawyer because she's the one who did all the discovery.
Miss Merchant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Fannie was able to wrap her around the wheel a little bit and trip her up. Trump's guy, that second lawyer, did I think a pretty good job of pinning her down. Even
planned that,
raising his voice on her, but he actually shocked her into, please don't yell at me.
Yeah, but he's also a man, and she made it really clear she has no respect for women. That's why she couldn't hire women. She couldn't keep the attorneys in her office. And that's why there was the complaint from her best friend about the way that her boyfriend was treating her. And what's hilarious about that is that she knew that the boyfriend was a sexist a-hole, and she kept him in the position regardless, even though he was underqualified, because he was her little prostitute. And that's clearly what it was. It was I mean, this is just corruption at the highest level. You want to call her Fannie? I'm fine with that, because look, if you're going to take taxpayer dollars and essentially embezzle it into your own pocket and then your own campaign funds, I have no respect for you.
You call it embezzlement, I call it a kickback, and kickbacks aren't just for chainsaws.
Well, I could not help but think about the illustrious Robert Barnes throughout the testimony too. He always loves to say, "Never in writing, always in cash."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know where he originally got it from. That might be a James Elroy thing from the books, but it's not like he's recommending it. It's just he jokes about that, and oh my God, it fits so much. Well, and I agree with you on that, Danny. I don't even want to get into the psyche of that individual, because she is a case study of statement analysis on deception. Oh my God, she was horrible, even to the point of he never went into the Fulton house. That wasn't the question. And I like how I always forget the lawyer. Anyway, the first lawyer, she goes, "How about wherever you laid your head? How about where you laid your head?" I mean, she could never answer any question straight. Like, where did you get your cash? Through my sweat and tears.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well,
no, not where did you get the cash? Where did the cash come from?
Okay.
Well, the cash came from taxpayers, not from her blood, sweat, and tears. That's where the cash came from. And I've ran against freaking corrupt DAs, and I'll tell you, they are hard to unseat from political sides. I'll tell you right now, it's nearly impossible, especially when you have that much money flowing around. And then on top of that, I'm just upset. Everybody should take a back seat when they're thinking about this from a political angle and a political scope. This isn't about politics. At this point, it's about pure corruption, okay? And it took her prosecuting a former president in order to reveal that corruption. If that's happening in Fulton County, think for 1 second about what's happening in your neighborhood.
Well, you know what? I gotta bring all this back in, because we're talking a lot about the salacious stuff. But we started this discussion saying, what the heck is this? What kind of proceeding is this? This is an evidentiary hearing related to a motion to disqualify and a motion to dismiss an indictment. So what has to be ultimately, I mean, there's so many different factors involved, but ultimately the proof for disqualification is that the DA and Nathan Wade, the lead prosecutor, were financially interested in the conviction of Donald Trump and the other defendants. So one of the things that I brought up in some of my videos is, while a lot of this stuff is interesting and it does pretend about corruption, potentially, certainly kind of underhanded appearance of impropriety, I wonder at the end of the day, with a judge who used to work for Fani Willis and seems to be a little protective of her as we go through the proceedings, if ultimately he's going to make a legal determination that there wasn't an active or actual conflict that will justify disqualification. And the other part we have to really add to this whole discussion is that even if she's found guilty, I'm going to use that word very loosely, even if she should be disqualified, then that's the judgment of the court. Probably the indictment will just be refiled, and it'll take place later on with some representative of her office. So while we certainly enjoy all the salaciousness of this proceeding, I don't know.
On that.
Ian, I understood it though. If she gets disqualified, the office is out. But
I'd have to go to the state.
I think there's a downside to this though for all these, for the defendants in this. I think the next step is then the Georgia Attorney General, which, I mean, and I said this at the Young Drug Trial shows, these guys are just, a bunch of yahoos running it. The Georgia Attorney General's office is going to be very competent at this. They're not going to be a bunch of yahoos. I get, yes, people say Georgia's.
RICO, though? I mean, if you think about it, they'd have to refile and redo it a whole different way.
Whatever they do, they're not going to be a bunch of bumpkins who are hiring their boyfriend, paying him $1 million, and then gallivanting off to go to wine country with it. They're going to be
boyfriend and his two other attorneys that she contracted with prior to boyfriend, knowing that they were incompetent. She hires the one and he doesn't do the job. And so then she hires his friend. I mean, this is a long cycle. And that's where I don't think that the court can look away from this, because it's not alleged misconduct. There's clear misconduct. She did violate the law by not at least examining the second contract that her boyfriend signed, not the first. There was not a renewal of that same contract. He said it himself. himself. She said it as well. There were two separate contracts. They should have gone through the contracting process that was completely overlooked. I mean, he should not even be being paid by the county of Fulton County. So he's going to get disqualified. I don't see how the judge can look the other way, especially with an election year coming up and his election being on the line. There are so many aspects to this case where if the judge doesn't step in and at least disqualify her boyfriend, I don't know how he survives.
A question I have too, though, is Ian, you mentioned before about appearance. Isn't that extremely relevant that even if something isn't completely one way, the appearance of it, in fact, is a no-go?
Well, it is politically, but not legally. I mean, if you look, I've reviewed the law, and if you look at it, it has to be an actual conflict of interest. And in this particular case, I mean, again, I'm not arguing on behalf of the Fulton County Prosecutor's Office or Fannie Willis, but if you just look at the law, you will see that there is a definite argument that this was not an actual conflict of interest that allowed Fannie Willis to benefit financially from the prosecution of Donald Trump and the other co-defendants. So if there is a real serious route to this being dismissed, or I shouldn't say dismissed, she not being disqualified. The other part to remember, and then I'm going to bring this up in my video that's going to come out right after this. I think Donald Trump wants Fannie Willis to be his prosecutor. I mean, after having seen the testimony and the ability, you could criticize a whole bunch of different things about, Fannie's testimony and Nathan Wade's testimony. Don't you think he kind of wants them to be the prosecutor? If you had to be prosecuted, wouldn't you kind of want to be prosecuted by Fannie Willis as opposed to the Attorney General's office or some other prosecutorial agency?
Actually, you bring that up, but speaking of other agencies, Judge Enderon or whatever has released that his decision is going to come out today. But folks, trust me, there's no coordination whatsoever. Everybody is 100% independent. We don't want to at all take away from the sting of what's going on in Georgia with a decision coming from New York, right? This is completely on the up and up, complete coincidence. Doesn't everybody agree?
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with Ian, though. I mean, like I said, Fannie Willis, I didn't think she was like a rock star to start with, but my God, this woman is a moron. She talked about, when you think about the witness stand, guys, I know you're out there, and I said this in my stream last night. The witness stand is a spot with a big white X painted on underneath it, and you have to sit there. And that big white X says, this is a spot where you can get ambushed, and you will get ambushed. Why would you walk onto that if you don't have to be there? Her attorneys were up there fighting it, and she says, no, I'm going to do it. Like that, this played out like a Perry Mason episode. They baited her into it. She came downstairs huffing and puffing. And I can say this, the fat guy, you could tell she ran downstairs and she's leaning up against the desk and and she's all fired up.
The dress was on backward, for Pete's sake.
Well,
yeah, that was a weird one.
I think that bow was meant to hide something down that way. I'm going to try to disguise it.
No, I've had one of those little dresses. And what you have to do is you have to think about the way that you're wearing it, because it gets wrapped up, and it gets wrapped up the wrong way. And as soon as I saw her zipper, I went, she put this dress on backwards. That's why her boobs look funny.
Well, I think they probably look like, I think she probably some funny.
I'm sorry. Her silhouette was oddly shapen.
But she walked in there and it also had like a few good men vibes. She starts getting up there, running her mouth. She can't control herself. She's almost mouthing off to the judge. I think, and to be fair, I think Merchant and Sato and all those guys, they had worked it out because Ashley Merchant is an attorney from that area. And I will say, as much as law Twitter is cringe at times, there's a couple of attorneys who are on law Twitter who are down in Georgia saying this attorney was good and very likely. And I mean, there's no way Trump's team and all these guys didn't work together on setting it up where Sato comes in at the end and starts lighting Fannie up.
Well, I mean, Merchant discovered all that. Yeah. You got to give her that. She's the one who uncovered this whole mess. So credit where it is due.
Well, that's what the press wants us to believe. But yes.
But it's also really great litigation strategy, because they started off with her on every single witness. Her sole job was to wear them down and to piss them off, annoy the witness, get them to start talking, and then to come in with the ring dingers, with the following attorneys to kind of settle them down and then sort through the crap. Her whole job was to be the fan for which the crap would hit.
Okay. And I was going to bring up, I spent a lot of time not so much on Fannie Willis's testimony, but actually on Nathan Wade's. That was what I was doing at like 11 o'clock yesterday. What was interesting about him is that, you got to understand, he is going to be the guy coordinating. He's going to be the guy, the front guy doing press conferences and in front of the jury and those kinds of things for Donald Trump, the previous president of the United States. And if you heard Merchant's questioning concerning his interrogatory responses that were given in his divorce, I don't know if you guys saw any of that, but he admitted that he did it himself. And then just little things like all the answers had the number 1 in front of them. They were arguing over the first number 1 or the second number 1 or the third number 1 answer to his responses, which were really relevant to this case. And what we would have just smacked me is, how did this guy, one, teach at judicial conferences? He was also a municipal judge, just like Fannie Willis was, and higher level, making $1 million out of fees from Fulton County. And this guy is not able to answer interrogatories properly. So I'm
maybe
thinking
Fannie wasn't his only chick.
Pardon?
Well, I
was going to say maybe Fannie wasn't his only chick, but that whole I wasn't really married argument just is so it was just so disgusting. Him trying to play dumb at this level. I mean, as long as he's consistent, I don't know if Jean-Pierre is playing or not, but yeah, it seems to be a running theme with the White House spokespeople.
So who's dumber?
Yeah, well,
out of the two,
that's hard.
I'm serious.
He is, because he has much more to lose. Jean-Pierre, so she loses her spot. So what? She becomes a commentator. He loses his license. He has potential criminal implications. Mm-hmm. He's smarter, and therefore
so does Fani.
It's a longer fall.
Yeah,
Fani definitely. I think they proved conclusively that she lied about the amount of money exchanging. On that form,
she's got 6 months of cash to fall back on. So
I'm sorry. I thought you meant Jean-Pierre. I'm so sorry.
She also said, "Well, sometimes I take money out of my campaign and hold on to it."
Oh, I know, that was funny.
And I will say, and I know, Steve, you are a fine Southern gentleman. You're in North Carolina, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not Georgia, but I will say that this is a issue of Fulton County, Georgia, Cobb County, Georgia, is an endemic corruption problem in that area. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you talk to attorneys who practice down there, it's been very endemic. The Cobb County Jail, the Fulton County Jail, Nathan Wade actually was involved with writing a report about, well, these guys were dying. He wrote a report, and they're like, well, do you have notes? He's like, no, I didn't take them. I just kept it all in my head. It is a very endemic issue in this area. So it's just, this is coming to light. It's like if you hadn't learned about Chicago and you're learning about, wow, this Mayor Daley guy wasn't as good as we thought he was.
So Ian had talked about a little bit before about framing this hearing. What is it? And I think it's good to remember that while the judge let Fannie do whatever the hell she wanted to on the stand, what he didn't do was let the scope get broader, okay? Because we're talking about whether this is a financial interest. Like Ian said, imagine if the scope of this evidentiary hearing was actually her potential bias, the church speech, all the things she said. None of that stuff is getting done in this hearing. The judge has had his foot down on that. He's not letting the parties stray out. He even told her this isn't going to be the forum to address that. And he's been clear with that with the attorneys too. So as crazy as this has been, it's been over a very limited scope of what really is what people think of the total issue of this.
A fraction of the crazy is what you're trying to say.
Yes.
Very true.
Because I would believe, and I'm just speculating here, this is pure allegations and projections and speculation, but I believe it's much, much deeper. I believe there's connections to people that want to be able to bring him down. There's campaign contributions. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we could go into just from seeing their demeanor on the stand. It's almost entitled, arrogant. They're never going to go to jail. They're never going to, and so I think that if the scope was enlarged, Steve, it would be crazy.
Well, this is like a TV show. I mean, seriously, this seems like it's an Ozark or any of the Southern Gothic crime series. You know that the cash is coming from everywhere. There's a reason why she picked Rico. Why would she think Rico? Who else is thinking Rico? What kind of lifestyle do they have? How do they deal with each other? Oh, organized crime. This has all the hallmarks. I'm not saying it is, but it sure, what is it? History never repeats itself, but it sure rhymes. Let's just say that this rhymes with organized crime, in my opinion. I'm not going to say it is, but boy, it sure sounds like it.
Yeah, she's an expert on Rico. That's why she did this. She's like, I recognize this.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys hear the part where Nathan Wade said that he has 2 other associates who work with him and they share accounts and expenses, even though they're not recognized as a partnership? I was going to ask you guys, what are your thoughts on that? My understanding is that your IOLTA has to be tied to your firm and that's also tied to your clients. If they don't have a recognized partnership, by the state, is the bar association just going to kind of go meh? It doesn't matter because they have a functioning partnership, like they all understand the rules.
Well,
I don't know.
To me, it's smacks of a violation of any professional responsibility rules there.
Yeah, no, huge.
Yeah,
yeah.
But
Good.
the other thing is,
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, but the context is that I don't think they'll ever get convicted or charged or have any problems. You got to understand kind of the context is. I think that Steve was alluding to. This is kind of a what would I say? I should say allegedly criminal enterprise. And I think that these guys all know each other. They all prop each other up. Even the lawyers. I don't know if you saw, but Miss Merchant, the criminal defense attorney, she was actually campaigning for, I believe it was Nathaniel Wade in 2016. So
she's a local attorney.
Yeah, there's a picture of her with a shirt on. Saying that he should be a judge. So you got to understand, it's all connected. It's all connected.
Yeah, the other term for it, I think they say inbred.
Yeah, I mean
incestuous.
Incestuous.
It's incestuous.
Incestuous.
But not inbred.
Well, there is some breeding going on, but anyway, you are right. Incestuous is a term we want.
But I mean, that just shows you how endemic it is, though, where. If you want to be an attorney, you've got to go ahead and do all this. And, you have to basically glad hand people like this. And, I'm lucky where I'm at. It's not that bad. It's like, no, you see a judge running. I don't worry about who I have to write checks to or who I support. You just do your lawyer thing. But that's places like that. That's not how it works. And that's.
I don't know. I'm actually touring right now for the demonetization check. Which I'm sure
we haven't done anything. We haven't even gotten close to a line.
Oh, good God! America's Untold. We're demonetized within 5 to 10 minutes. As soon as we say hello, welcome to the show, it's like cling, yellow.
Yes, Micro Bear's face comes on, gone.
Yeah, it's getting bonkers so far. Knock on wood, not yet. I always am going to say the yet because I've had it literally at the end of the show. They're like, oh, hey, I made it through. I look at it, and then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, it's like, bonk.
It is interesting, though, how these local DAs have become so important as part of the political battlefield over the last X years, right?
Yeah.
And that's been the case in this state, too, for the county that I'm in. The Democrats, whoever they select, that's probably going to be the DA because of the way that it votes in this county. So it's important for them to have good gatekeeping, and we have a good DA. But she had a challenger who sounded, if you just read his email, sounded like a ultra right wing Republican. But it turns out he's one of these wackos that was going to let everybody out of jail and selectively prosecute. And the Democrats had to fight this person off to keep the reasonable person. If he had managed to, in this backwater, very quiet kind of primary situation, take out the original DA, that he would have been elected in the general. And so you've seen that around the country. Where
hold on, I got to point something out. Hold on, you said
I was going to say that's not the
Fulton
case against the DA I ran against. We're talking like thousands of the same declination letters, all saying the exact same thing. We're talking copy and paste on repeat violent offenders, leading to murders. It's so bad that our Utah Court of Appeals, they had to issue a reprimand towards our DA saying This guy wouldn't, the pedo who ended up preying on another victim, wouldn't have been able to do that had the DA actually moved forward. And because he hadn't moved forward on the charges, so he charged him, but then he just delayed prosecution for years and years and years because he's terribly incompetent. He can't house his own staff. He has his own little slush fund that he takes out of the county dollars. That's why I'm so pissed off, because I understand how this stuff operates. It's not Fulton County residents who had their tax dollars stolen. It is federal dollars that are stolen first by the county and then distributed through federal programs before they reach into their own bucket. So if you have misallocation of funds going to your boyfriend's friends, and you have literally $1 million in cash benefit going to somebody who's your buddy, that's money taken away from what the office actually needs. Actual hiring of competent prosecutors to seek justice. And the DA's office, I don't know how your counties are, but the DA's office here is also responsible for looking over the entire county budget and saying, okay, yeah, we want to make sure that the local Defense Attorneys Association also gets the same share of money, if not a little bit more, because we're worried about constitutional constraints. I mean, she set up that county for sexual discrimination claims in employment. There are so many problems with what she did, but that's not uncommon, unfortunately, from what I've observed, at least in my local jurisdiction.
I also have to point out, because you said the word backwater, Steve. I've got to push at you extremely hard. We are talking about Fulton County, which holds Atlanta, one of probably the top 10 cities.
How about where he lives?
Okay. I was going to say,
because nobody pays attention to our DA primary, right? And that could have been a big deal for us. Yeah, I was talking about us.
Okay, cool. Because I was going to say, wow, no, they're
that's
acting like
exception.
a backwater.
Yes.
They're acting like it down there, but Atlanta's. It's ridiculously huge. Hold on. Jim Satala, 2 points. Wade was in the meeting when the ex-governor was interviewed, so he had to already be hired by Fani. Fani testified she wasn't dating anyone in 2019 and 2020, but her father contradicted her testimony, saying dating a DJ. Oh, good. It's good to Dad. Super helpful, Dad. Thank you, Jim, for filling in. I saw a lot in the chat that Pops, we'll say, Pops Panther, was not very helpful to her. But I did like the governor. Did you guys see the governor's testimony? I mean, he is like such a smooth Southern lawyer. I mean, he had that down. That cracked me up. He's like, well, I don't know. I don't even know what I tried last year. I mean, he had every bit of the good old boy charm you could imagine. And from what I understand, he's a pretty talented lawyer. I mean, suing a country of Syria, that's not a bad move, It's pretty good.
That was awesome when he pulled that out of his pocket. Oh, you want a big case I did? How about this one? Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, and a perfect enemy. So let me see. We got that. We got the funny.
Well, Eric, I was going to ask you, just from your perspective, what do you think is going to happen with this? Is this going to be a week saga, and then we're going to get a decision from the judge on Wednesday of next week or Friday of next week, and then we're just going to move on? What do you think is going to happen?
I'm not sure, because I felt like the judge wants us to go away. Like yesterday, he was rushing people like, hey, I got a dinner date. Let's get on. Here, you're next. Come on. Let's get on. Can you give it to me in outline form? I'm like,
he's also a young guy. He's only like 35 years old or something like that. I mean, he's a brand new judge. He's like, I got my whole freaking career ahead of me, and this is like what I've waded into. It's not like he's like, oh, I'll retire in like 2 or 3 years anyway, so who cares? This crash and burns. He's like, I got golf, I got kids. Like,
good point, and especially since Fani and Wade were both judges themselves. Is this judge planning to run for Fulton County DA himself down the road? And are there political ramifications from her church and other connections? Well, Danny, you said, and everybody, it's incestuous. So good point.
Well, I assume the burden is on, say, Trump's side, the defendant's side, to carry this, to show this. And so when you talk about, which is true, there's been contradictory evidence given by some of the witnesses on the state side. That's not good for them, but then I don't think they have the burden, right? So the the defendants in this case need to show this financial interest. And so I kind of think it kind of comes down to, do you believe this cash story that I used to pay out of cash? Because hypothetically, if she reimbursed him all this money, or the judge goes, well, you know, maybe she did and maybe she didn't, I can't say for sure, therefore you didn't carry the burden, right? So the defendants could lose on this just by the virtue of the burden.
I have a question for you guys. If it's found that Nathan Wade, if the judge finds that Nathan Wade certainly did have a financial interest that he benefited from, and it was procured by, illegitimate means, because in this case it was. If there was no contracting process for the government contractors to go through, and she arbitrarily just gave it to her boyfriend, who subsequently coincidentally happened to divorce his wife one day after, or file for a divorce against his wife one day after receiving the contract. If he's kicked, what happens to her representation? Does she stay around? Is it possible is there a scenario where she would stick around and have to find a new special prosecutor?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't, has this happened before that? I mean, it's so crazy, all this going on.
I highly doubt this has ever happened before.
I can't help but think of Avenatti vibes and things like that. Like, there's so many people that get wrapped up in the whole Trump thing, and it just is blowing up in their face.
Well, I haven't read the motion, but I see Nate's popping in, and maybe he can answer a question that what Danny was saying was making me think.
Can you ask again, Danny?
Who is subject to the sanction here? Is it just the Wade person, or is it the DA's office and the contractor? Like, who could get kicked off based on what the judge finds?
Well, yeah, and can one get kicked off without the other is my question, ultimately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so the disqualification that we're doing with the Fannie Willis case, I'm assuming that's what we're talking about, right? The Fannie Willis disqualification. So the disqualification motion is for the DA's office, Fannie Willis. Now you could do particular prosecutors, but they're going after her, because if you get her disqualified, then since the DA's office is all the authority of the DA's office runs through her, everybody in the DA's office is also disqualified. So they'd have to move it to another office, because all of them are her subordinates. So that's why they're trying to disqualify her. Right now, the reason for disqualification is that they're saying that this is an old school kickback scheme. She paid Wade $500,000. Wade then in turn doesn't give her cash, but gives her benefits like trips and all this other stuff. And through those trips, she directly benefits from the prosecution of these defendants. So if they can show that that's what happened, then that conflict of interest would then force the judge to remove the case from that office and then assign it to another office, maybe Cobb County or something else. Now, if it was a deputy DA, then you could just qualify that deputy DA and it could go to someone else in the office. But since it's a top prosecutor, that whole office would be disqualified.
So Nate, here's my question then. Is there a situation, where Nathan Wade gets disqualified and she doesn't, because he received, so my argument for his disqualification is really clear. The guy is not coming in as an independent contractor. They didn't follow the contracting policies, certainly. There's no way that he received funds from the county without there being a process in place for him to receive those funds that clearly wasn't followed. He then got his buddies to receive funds as well. Is there a scenario where, and it does appear to be quid pro quo, at least to me, his hiring. So for example, he filed for a divorce. He waited, allegedly, according to his testimony yesterday, his wife cheated on him in 2015. He waited until after the day he was awarded the contract to file for a divorce against his wife. Do you think that there's a scenario where he gets kicked and she stays on?
No, because unfortunately, they're not actually even saying that to disqualify him. They're disqualifying Fannie, and through Fannie's disqualification, he would be disqualified because he doesn't have any financial motive. He essentially saying, I'm getting paid for the work I'm doing. Now, with his hiring practices, this morning, they actually brought on some of the other candidates for this job. So Fannie Willis actually tried to give the job to other prosecutors.
The governor.
And this is just my point, guys. This is one thing we got to have a fine distinction. Okay. We need to have a fine distinction on, and that is getting a kickback or getting cash or however they want to work it out may not be sufficient for the standard of actual conflict of interest. You could argue Fannie shouldn't have done what she did, but is it directly tied to her financial benefit out of the prosecution of Donald Trump and those co-defendants? And that's why in my video, I tried to be as sympathetic as possible, but I tried to kind of really get that line there. While she could be convicted of perjury or theft or all the different things you could argue, in this particular proceeding, the thought is, did she do something that created an actual conflict of interest in the conviction of Donald Trump specifically? And I think that that's possible, that could go through where there's not an actual conflict of interest, in which case maybe Donald Trump likes the fact that now all the dirty laundry is out there, that Fannie continues to be the prosecution in this case.
I agree. Yeah, that makes sense.
But the one thing that they're hammering on, and the key point to this is, and that both sides are fighting on, all the other facts are pretty much, everybody says the relation. Well, two facts that are in dispute. One, when the relationship started. So they needed to first show a good faith basis for these allegations, right? Why the hell are we even bringing? You can allege anything against anybody, but then do you have a good faith basis to bring people in and even question them? Now, the good faith basis came from her best friend from those years ago, saying the relationship started in 2019. So that was the first part. Okay, we have somebody who's saying the stuff that you guys said under oath are lies. So that was given a good faith basis to bring in Nathan Wade. And then the second thing the defense had to try to figure out is that, can we connect the money he was getting from Fulton County to now giving back to the DA, Fannie Willis, in some way? And the way they've tried to make that connection is through this relationship. Now, in response to that, her getting tens of thousands of dollars in these benefits, her response is that I reimbursed them for all of those dinners, all of that stuff. I gave him that money back. Now, there's been no facts to dispute that, but now it just turns to credibility. Do you believe that's the case? And how did she reimburse? Now, we all know, Ian's been a prosecutor too. What's the first thing, if you got no receipts and you say you paid somebody back, what's the first thing you say? Cash. We paid it in cash. And why do we pay it in cash? Because there's no receipts, nothing, and you got to trust my good name, the fact that that's the receipt. The receipt is me. So now that's why they're attacking Fannie's credibility. Well, the relationship didn't start here. Well, you didn't do this. Well, you only paid. So if the judge finds that their credibility is shot, then that I paid in cash is not trustworthy, and you could lead to this disqualification. Now they have they have one more witness they're trying to bring on. Well, this is from the day where they're trying to bring on to try to destroy the rest of this credibility by saying that the relationship started back in 2019. Now, do I believe all this is going to work? I don't know, but that's the process in which they're trying to elicit this testimony.
But the one thing I wanted to bring up too, and I looked at case law, this has come up in some ways before, especially in different states. And the situation is, a DA brings a prosecution and a subsequent conviction as a means to get a political candidate out of the way or some business interest. And you can tie it. It's like Ian really wants to prosecute Nate because when Nate's gone, Ian can be a better YouTuber or whatever the thing is. So it's a direct interest in this particular case. And again, I'm not arguing for Fannie Willis, but the fact that she's maybe lying and she maybe got free trips from her boyfriend from someone that she appointed as lead prosecutor, that doesn't directly tie with the conviction of Donald Trump. So I just want to get everybody ready for this, that as bad as it looks, and boy, the crazy at Fulton County, it may not be directly tied to the conviction of Donald Trump, because whether or not Donald Trump gets convicted or not, she's still getting the vacations. I mean, it's just kind of their bad business practices.
Well, again,
what about
from yesterday?
I understand the conviction. What about charging?
Not even charging.
Or not charging. Excuse me, but continuing the.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The argument from their side isn't about convicting Donald Trump. It's about the prosecution in of itself. It's what they're saying is that the prosecution is still continuing because she's getting a financial benefit from continuing on the prosecution. The longer it continues, the more money Wade gets. So even if he's convicted or not, is not the point that they're trying to make. They're saying she's hiring her boyfriend to make all this money to get this kickback. And in the furtherance of that prosecution, that's where the conflict is. If she
I
wasn't
know,
getting
but the
kickback,
problem
she
is
wouldn't be
that applies to
prosecuting.
any criminal defendant. In other words,
Yes,
it doesn't.
I agree.
It's not necessarily related to Donald Trump. This scheme, however you want to allege it, could have been a benefit to just some random criminal out there. So you have to be tied to actual conviction of the co-defendants and Donald Trump. Otherwise, arguably, the judge has got to kick this.
I have a question. Is it possible, Ian and everybody, that the judge could kick this and that she winds up being tried and going to jail on the same thing? It's just not necessarily tied to this case, just the corruption in the
IRS,
office.
perjury, lots of different potential violations.
Yeah, she may be corrupted as maybe kickback, but it's not related to this, and the judge could say that.
Yeah,
it's just highly corrupt behavior, but it doesn't. She's just generally a scumbag. She's not
exactly.
and that's sad, but it does make a mockery of the system to think that's the actual standard. Is, well, if she's just a complete reprobate, okay, well, she's been treating everybody equally and fairly. There's been an equal application of the law. Through its
or
enforcement
equally
by
unfairly.
scumbag. Well, yeah, but that's like that may be the argument. Like, at the end of the day, I could see the DA's office making that argument. Like, look, we're corrupt to everybody.
Ian, what about if this is more of a but-for causation situation? So, but for the continued prosecution of Donald Trump, she wouldn't have had the opportunity to give the contract to her boyfriend to engage in this type of kickback scheme.
I think that's a really, really interesting argument. I think it falls short because there's an active burden to bring forth affirmative evidence by the defense attorneys to show an actual pecuniary benefit as a result of this specific defendant's prosecution. And Nate is exactly right. I shouldn't have said conviction. I should have said prosecution. And if you look at the case law, it's not enough that this prosecutor becomes famous now. That they don't view that as, even though she's going to be, I guess she's charging $12,000 a speech now, but probably even after this dirty laundry situation, she's going to be charging $50,000 a speech. She's definitely going to write a book. She's going to make money off that. But evidently the law does not allow that to be the financial interest that could implicate her disqualification or cause her disqualification.
Yeah, the argument from the I don't want to even say Trump, from Roman's team is,
yes,
she hired an unqualified attorney who happened to be her boyfriend, paid him more money than all the other special prosecutors, and then took kickbacks in the forms of gifts, lavish travel, and all that for the prosecution of Roman, not even Trump, and that now her financial interest in the continued prosecution or the continue of this guy Wade receiving funds from the prosecutor's office is the conflict of interest that should disqualify her. That's the argument, just plain and simple. But I think Ian is 100% correct. That's an extremely high bar to overcome, because then, and especially with the fact that she's saying she paid everything back and everything is murky. Tie, in this case, I don't know if you guys like baseball references, but tie goes to the runner. So if it's a tie, she's going to win.
Yeah.
Okay, so but would everybody universally agree, no matter what the outcome, this still benefits Trump and the defendants?
Oh, hell yeah.
100. Everybody's benefiting from this. Everybody's got to win here. I mean, there is nothing. The only potential downside I could see is the post-trial consequences that may be brought, right? I mean, for right now, though, politically speaking, I don't see those. I'm just going to be honest, you guys. This is where law and politics gets really dirty, and I just don't see any form of prosecution for any of their misdeeds or corruption outside of them potentially losing their seats in the political sphere. And the reason for that is you saw it. The judge kept demurring to her. She kept ordering people around. I mean, you saw the attorney. She says, she asked for permission, to approach the witness. And the witness, Fanny, says, yeah, you have my permission. And I'm like, what? So, and you saw the judge demur to her multiple times because, again, the judge is coming up for re-election. The judge doesn't want to get his hands dirty. He might end up becoming DA. He doesn't want to piss off anybody in the same way that nobody wants to piss off anybody. I just don't see a lot of consequences here, and I see a ton of benefit for everyone involved.
But Diddy, like I was an ADA. And I've been in those situations where My boss was a deputy DA and is yelling at the judge, and the judge is yelling, and I'll get your boss down here right now because you're an idiot. And I'm like, all right, here comes my boss, and they go yelling and stuff.
I've been
like
that guy too.
You've been
I've been there.
And the reason why is most people just understand this. When you're an ADA, you work with these same judges over and over and over again. I remember being there with a case file, with a file of cases, maybe 150, 200 cases. I got to get through that day. And this one judge sitting there, and we there for 8 hours a day. And I'm doing this for the whole week, 150 cases a day. And I got to work with this guy, right? And he's going to have to see me in 5 weeks when it's my next rotation. So when this judge is working with Fannie in that way, giving her that type of thing, I think people have to understand. He knows that this hearing is one thing, but I got to work on her tomorrow. I got to work on her next week. And as long as she's still this place. And don't forget, he used to be an ADA under Fannie Willis, so he worked with her before and all this other stuff.
For 4 years.
She was a judge before. So
and Wade was a judge too. That's what I was saying.
Wade was a judge.
This judge may want to become a DA in 5 to 10 years.
Now, her the way she acted was obviously atrocious, and not for any professional. It was an embarrassment for the profession. The way she was acting
100%,
yesterday. No doubt about it. But the fact of the matter, I don't blame that judge because it's but so much you can do when you know that you have to continue this relationship after this. I understand people want her to come down, but let's just be honest here. If you've worked in that type of world, you understand why he had to kind of walk a nice little line there.
Yeah, and I understand that, but you can have an authoritative judge who you end up respecting and working with and having a working relationship with that's positive. I think the more likely scenario is that, and I can't guarantee this because I haven't looked it up, but my guess is that they are on the same party ticket, that they have the same party affiliations, that they pull from the same donors, and that this judge was very conscious and aware that he was on TV, that this was being televised, and if he wants to win his next election, it would be a bad look to be going against someone within his own party. That's my personal opinion. But I totally agree with you, Nate. Like, I don't think that it's solely that. Obviously, they still have to work together, and he has to work kind of hand in hand with her for presumably as long as and especially if they're both on the same ticket, on the same party, right? They both want to be, in sync and doing, kind of following the same program. Everybody wants to have some type of established rapport. I totally get that. I'm just saying everybody was a winner yesterday from a political, financial perspective.
But I do want to bring something up that I think most people are missing. This is the second time he's been asked to disqualify Fannie Willis in this case. Now, this happens all the time, to be honest with you, a lot of time. Here's what happened the first time when he denied the disqualification. And here's his little speech. It's about a minute, but I'll play it because, this has come up before. And I think this goes to Ian's point, where even if it's crazy, there's limits to this thing. So here's the same judge. Disqualification earlier on something that happened.
Using the title of your office and having on social media that you, as this political office holder, are holding a fundraiser for the opponent of someone that this political office is investigating. I don't know that it's an actual conflict, but I use that phrase, what were you thinking? Where the prosecutor thought I could prosecute the co-defendant of someone I defended. It's a what are you thinking moment. The optics are horrific. If you are trying to have the public believe that this is a nonpartisan, driven by the facts, and I'm not here to critique decisions, the decision was made, but if we are trying to maintain confidence that this investigation is pursuing facts in a nonpartisan sense, no matter who the district attorney is, we follow the evidence where it goes and ignore the fact that I hosted a fundraiser for the political opponent of someone I've just named the target. That's problematic.
I like this.
Maybe not from an actual conflict level, but if we are at a cocktail party and people are asking, you think that this is a fair, balanced approach to things? I do. Well, how do you explain this? How does one explain? I mean, that's the concern I'm working through, is that it's not a lowercase a appearance. It's like a capital A with flashy lights.
Flashy lights.
The opponent of someone I've named the target of my investigation.
So this is different.
Judge. Jury, and I'm on national media almost nightly talking about this investigation. That's problematic.
Okay.
So that was the first. So yeah, that's the the first judge. And then
Okay, I was going to say not the same judge.
Yeah, this is not the same judge. Sorry.
And he's so lucky he's not on this anymore.
But so they've asked that. So this is and the reason why this even came up was because Fannie Willis had done a fundraiser for Joe Biden, right? And we got Trump and all that stuff, and he's like, yeah, this seems like a big conflict. So just so everybody understands, even that, which we all know is messed up, she's literally fundraising for his opponent.
So you're trying to see
right?
history behind this person, Nate. I mean,
no, but I just want people to know, like, what Ian's saying is 100% true. It's probably more likely than not that she's going to be able to continue on with this case, because even something that outrageous, he couldn't do it. Well, he didn't do it.
I'm happy with the IRS. Look, I think she's done. Now, maybe not. Maybe she'll squeak through this case or whatever, but I think she's done. Stick a fork in her ass and turn her over. Let's get the IRS in on this. There's a lot of cash that's going around that's not declared. She literally said on the stand, what was it? Well, it's just like, yeah. Well, that also, what about the whole, it's just like not paying my bill and going shopping. Mm-hmm. So what? She's flagrantly disregarding anything lawful, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like she's above it.
But why do you think she has so much confidence in that flagrance? Why do you think? Because she knows.
Protected.
Well, because you know what? A lot of people get that way.
Spotlight. Yeah. It's one thing to, girl boss yourself around Atlanta, but when you do that in front of the entire country, it's really hard for people to pretend that's not happening.
Also, that's criminals. No offense, but criminals are not necessarily brain trusts, in my opinion. And behavior tends to be repeated. So if poor behavior is successful for somebody, they will keep repeating it until they get caught on that. I mean, you guys have all tried different people and stuff, and is it not true that they will become more and more and more and more flagrant with their behaviors as they go?
We used to say, when I was a cop, we used to always say success breeds repetition.
Thank you, Nate. Perfect.
That's what we used to say. So the more you're successful at criminal activity, the more likely you are to repeat it.
Well, look at the guy in South Carolina, McDonald, whatever, who was just tried for multiple murders and robbing everybody blind.
Murdoch. This is a Murdoch case, baby. And it's just a matter of time is the thing, though. I mean, I'm not saying she won't eventually see consequences, but it's an eventuality that is so far from today that by the time they get there, they'll probably dismiss everything and everything will go away. She understands the news cycle. These people aren't dumb. It will go away from the national consciousness. No one's going to give a crap. And I trust the IRS to hold a Democratic DA who's going after Donald Trump. I really don't trust that they'll actually do their job. That's my point.
Well, let's take it to its logical extension, and that is, you mentioned time, Danny. Well, this may cause a delay in the proceedings. There is an argument, and Danny brought it up, that maybe the lead prosecutor, in this case, Nathan Wade, would be removed, and that could happen. There could be a situation where Fannie Willis is not disqualified, but because of political perception and things, and the higher ups that are paying her campaign funds say, listen, let's get someone else in there at least. If that's the case, that person could come in and say, listen, I need more time. I got to prep this case against the former president and I don't know how many co-defendants with him. So they have an August 5th, 2024 trial date. That could push it closer to the election. That could push it till after the election. And if that's the case, then if let's say Donald Trump got elected president again, you got to know that it's going to be a revenge litigation back at Fannie Willis and the whole office. So this may be another tactic. They may just want to have the lead prosecutor kicked. Fannie stays in as the head. She's not going to be cross-examining witnesses and Donald Trump on the stand, I don't believe. But it may cause a delay, which would benefit Trump.
Well, here's the weird part, though, and these are state charges, not federal. So that's where it gets so freaking crazy, because a lot of things, all the federal stuff was it Jack Smith and all that. It's like, okay, well, just get elected, pardon yourself, you're done. But
and
do that on the state level. So I mean, the scenarios we are facing are so freaking crazy. Like, remember, this is the mugshot trial, and you've already got, even right now, if Trump is arrested and locked up, you've got to have Secret Service throughout a jail. You literally would have to clear out the jail to hold him because of the security. So we're looking at some incredibly interesting times, because let's say that Trump does win, right? Then let's say that somehow, by some miracle, they pull this off and he is convicted in Georgia. Now, what do we have here? This is almost a constitutional crisis, is it not?
Yeah, I think so. I think there would be an immediate appeal to the next Court of Appeal, and eventually the Supreme Court. Probably the Supreme Court would have to rule in favor of Donald Trump. I don't see how we could have a functioning democracy with the president in jail.
Or would another option would be that while he's in office, they can't do anything. The second he walks out, he gets in hand, silver bracelets and put in. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think we've ever faced this.
Not in America. No.
No.
Anyway, that part is just so staggering and historic to consider what's going on here.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I think ultimately it's going to benefit, like I said, many different parties in this case. I do think, like Danny says, it's going to eventually, just like we kind of forgot about the first challenge against Fani Willis, we'll probably over time forget about that. This is a momentary point in history. But I do think that there are some good ramifications that could result in potentially justice in this situation.
Yeah, and also people are saying, "Oh, there's no way the IRS can do this or that." I don't know. Avenatti was so popular that CNN wanted him to run for president. Remember? And I mean, he was just the guy. He was so wonderful and brilliant. He's in prison, folks.
Yes,
he's in prison. Didn't Michael Cohen serve time? And he flipped on Trump and served some time. No, and I'm just saying though, is it's interesting how these things shake out. Plus, if I was a lawyer in the Atlanta area and I was representing anybody else, I would be digging so hard right now trying to find if I could peel back some of this corruption to go after her. We know now it's public what's going on. There has to be some people looking into this. You guys are all lawyers. Wouldn't you be going, can we do something with this? Is there something here?
Oh no, I 100% would. Anything they find, I'd be asking for copies of, like, can I use any of this to help my guy? I mean, you'd have to be crazy not to.
Oh, yeah. No, that's all I was shouting yesterday. 100%. I hope I'm wrong, you guys. I hope that you guys are right. I hope that there is some justice had. I hope that she's held accountable, because yesterday I was rather embarrassed of our being a part of our profession, just based on her performance, based on her behavior as DA. I'm disappointed. I'm heartbroken, honestly, for the victims that are not getting justice because of the misallocation of funds and the focus on this case for her own personal benefit. That to me is what bothers me the most. Well, at the end of the day, it's just it completely dissolves trust in our judicial system, and it's just not a good precedent at all. Who's going to want to run for president if you know that this is the potential liability and outcome? I mean, it would be a nightmare. I'll tell you, the only thing that gave me pause running for DA was the potential of this nightmare, because that's exactly what happened to the DA before this one took office. There was just an endless litigation, and it turns out the guy wasn't found guilty of anything, but he was accused of everything. His name was dragged through the mud. He couldn't get another job. He couldn't get more clients. He couldn't exactly move. His whole family was here. I mean, it was a disaster. And for those who don't know, you can go and look it up. It's the John Swallow, Mark Shurtleff case here in Utah. The AG and DA teamed up, the two candidates, allegedly, because they're on opposite sides of the aisle, but allegedly they teamed up in their own respective elections to take down the DA and AG in my state. So, I mean, I hope, though, that you guys are right. I really do.
Speaking of DAs and corruption and crime, because crime's becoming legal all over the place, one of the big benefactors to legalization of crime is the illustrious George Soros' foundation. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but Huma Abedin
Yes,
has
that woman.
moved on from a scumbag to a supervillain.
Yes.
So she was married to Anthony Weiner. And by the way, folks, if you have the last name of Weiner and you're caught with those pictures, why are you going to keep using that name? I mean, you should be saying, no, it's Weiner. It's Weiner. Don't say that. Don't say that's Weiner. But anyway, she now is dating Alex Soros, who has inherited his father's mantle. So isn't it great that Hillary Clinton's number one is confidant, collaborator, everything. I mean, they've been together, for literally decades. Their relationship is, they're thick as thieves beyond it. Now is with Soros. Oh, God. I don't know. I find it highly, highly disturbing. I find all of the DA investments disturbing too, and something I don't know if that's something you had to deal with or almost dealt with, Danny. Is that Soros has found that brilliantly. I got to give it to him. It's diabolical, it's evil, but I think it's actually brilliant because the DA election's a whole lot cheaper than a governor. It's a whole lot cheaper than a senator or a congressperson, and it's under the radar, and it's even more damaging.
I think what's even more frightening, and yes, I did have to battle that. I mean, the guy started off with a war chest of $1 million in campaign funds. I was able to bankrupt him, but he was able to fundraise an additional like 500,000. So, I mean, and we're talking in a matter of weeks from unknown sources. I mean, there's just so much, but it's damn near impossible. The fact that I got 42% of the vote, I'll take it, because it is so, and on top of that, you have to remember we're unseating an incumbent, right? Like that's already a hard ask. Now you have an incumbent with an unlimited war chest. It gets even more frightening. But to me, what's more scary is when I was in law school, which was, I'm guessing a lot earlier than you guys. I mean, I just came out. So, when I was in law school, though, we had the George Soros Foundation coming to our law school to teach us open borders, to educate us, quote unquote, educate us on open borders policies, restorative justice. All of the stuff that you're seeing these DAs do is being embedded in the minds of these young attorneys. And you wonder why you don't have the same caliber of attorneys who are arguing in front of the Supreme Court. Well, no wonder, because they have never been raised to think like attorneys. One, two, they've been, there's so many issues I have with the ABA associated law schools, but that to me is far more frightening is what is being pushed on students in the law schools. I'll tell you, I was labeled Hitler my first week of law school because my first week was Trump's inauguration, and I was the only one who wasn't, coming in with tear streaks down her face. And I wish that wasn't the case, because that wasn't my experience in political science in my undergrad. But in law school, it was extremely heavily liberal leaning, and I'm in a very conservative state now. Maybe I'm an outlier, but if Soros is coming to my college and university, don't think that he ain't coming to everybody's universities. So, I mean, at some point, the investment is a very short-term investment. You throw a million here, a million there, but who cares? You have a whole generation of attorneys to tout your propaganda and policies after the fact for free.
Well, if you're a billionaire, I mean, that means you could throw 1,000 millions. No problem. If you can sit there and part away, and you're earning so much money so quickly that it's actually very handily economical to do this. I mean, think about that. You could send $1 million to 1,000 campaigns, and you'll make it back up in about 6 months anyway. That's frightening to consider, because $1 million is a big damn deal for a local DA. And you don't have to go for the bigger cities. You don't have to. As a matter of fact, you're almost better off going for the ruby red DAs if you can, because that corrupts the system even more. I mean, a lot of the blue cities are already super corrupt. So why don't you start tackling the quote red cities and go after that, just like they go after the school boards. How many people on school boards do you think are conservative in the country?
Less than 1%.
Yeah.
It just something to consider.
But that's the thing. It's generational. It's a one-time investment, baby. That's it. It's just all it is breaking through that glass barrier. And in terms of like, your bar to entry, yeah, it is incredibly economical. And why no one thought to do this before, I don't know, because maybe we don't have a bunch of political geniuses sitting at the top. Hopefully we don't have too many political evil geniuses.
The Koch brothers did figure it out. They went after the state legislatures.
That's true.
And so some of this, and I think it was Nate who told me, or straightened up, or Elon Musk, I think, brought it up. But anyway, the Soros brothers, they invested in the state legislatures all around, and Soros was like, how can we undo that? Let's go after the DAs. So no, I would be fair. Both sides can do some manipulating.
Well, all I can say is too bad the British government didn't get mad when Soros crashed the pound. They let that slide for some reason. So,
well, because they profited. I mean, let's be honest. How many representatives in our government, see Pelosi and others, manage to become multi-millionaires on a public salary? How do they do this? How is it that they just are these super smart, stellar investors, and they know exactly where to put their money, what stocks are going to get there? I mean, I want to get on their 401k program, right? You know what? It's like, never mind the S&P 500. How about we get the congressional 401k program? By the way, I keep hearing a beeping. Is that?
I know, I do too. I turned off my sound to think it was my issue.
I'm sorry. I have something running. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm just like, God, it sounds like a battery, like a backup battery, like the power went out and the
Sean has a bomb he's trying to defuse. That's what it was.
No, it's a 3D printer going. Sorry.
Ooh, a 3D printer. I want to hear about that.
All right. Well, I'm gonna shift to, I think, probably the only other story of the day, but. I'm kind of personally involved with the whole Rust case, and Hannah Gutierrez, apparently you're not allowed to say Reed, according to Carrie Morrissey. She gets mad. But anyway, people know her as Hannah Gutierrez Reed. I guess legally her name is Hannah Gutierrez. Her trial starts next Wednesday. And there was a hearing on Valentine's Day that I managed to catch when it happened, but unfortunately it right, Ian, she is technically not Reed. I'm just pointing it out that even though, and it's good seeing Runkle in the chat here, even though she's not, I noticed that Sleepy Jason Bowles still calls her Hannah Reed every time, and I know that it's to grab the Thel Reed connection. Thel Reed's her stepfather. But anyway, she tried on Valentine's Day to make a dent in the case, and I watched it. I don't remember everything that happened, and I meant to download a copy of the video. I wish I did, because I went to go back and look that evening. It was gone. So unfortunately they didn't keep it. But part of what she tried to do was to get Seth Kinney disqualified as a witness. So they're seeing Seth Kinney, who is the press called him an armorer mentor, but he is not technically the armorer mentor. Oh, Ian, cool. Can you send that to me? Anyway, he is not the armorer mentor. Trust me, that's not the right term, but he ran the supply house that provided the guns and some of the blanks, ammunition and the dummy rounds, etc. The reason they were trying to say is that there was a document dump, essentially. So they had a search warrant for Hannah's phones, and in those phones were communications between Hannah and her lawyer, Jason Bowles. and they didn't filter it ahead of time. So you guys have to jump in and help me out if I'm screwing something up in how I'm describing it. But they did not filter out the attorney-client communications between Hannah and Jason Bowles, and they turned it over to Seth Kinney's legal team accidentally without that being filtered out. And the complaint was that Seth Kinney had effectively had access to all communications for 12 days before Carrie Morrissey asked Seth Kinney to delete the all the communications. But the judge ruled against her on that. The other thing that they were trying to do was get the evidence tampering charge severed. And one thing that I learned from this is I was under the impression that the cocaine, because one of the things she was charged with is evidence tampering for getting rid of cocaine of which she is in possession. I thought it was on set. It turns out that the cocaine in question was actually in her hotel room. So supposedly after she was questioned by the police, she went back to the hotel room, gave off the cocaine to the clerk or one of the clerks at the hotel to keep a hold of it for her. And that is what she's being charged with. I was kind of surprised, and I'm surprised that she lost on that ground, and they're still considered evidence tampering. Ian, please fill in where I'm screwing up.
So the main thing on why she loses the trying to throw out Seth Kenny's evidence is that her lawyer screwed up. Mm-hmm. And the big thing was that they signed a consent to search, and the consent to search did not mention any privilege issues on the phone. And the prosecution, the judge said, hey, defense, that was your job. You have to actually mark down that that's something to be concerned about. You can't sign an unreserved consent to search and then later go, oh no, we forgot to mention privilege, because otherwise, an unethical lawyer could use that to great ends, right? If you were playing games with that, you'd say, oh yeah, we'll sign an unreserved consent to search, and then we will come after you and say, why didn't you know that there were privilege issues? Well, because you never said. So the judge said, sorry, that's a you problem, and shut that down hard. With respect to the cocaine, the big problem that they had was just some of the texts involving drug use at the contemporaneously while handling ammunition at her hotel room.
But you said that this is the problem I have with it, Ian, is that I don't think that they showed that she was actually performing her job in the hotel room. I don't know. Let me explain. My reasoning is it's kind of like she had ammunition in the hotel room. She had her own ammunition, but that's not necessarily the set ammunition. And I don't understand. I don't know how they can say that her having the cocaine in the hotel room is necessarily relevant to being on the set, because they haven't tied the cocaine to the set. They haven't even proven that she was actually high, who she may well have been, but they didn't have a blood test. They didn't have any proof. She was actually in police custody before it happened. Nobody, as far as I know, tested her, proved any ties whatsoever. It seems like a stretch to me.
And the judge was a little skeptical. The judge said, hey, this does seem to be a stretch, but the prosecution was able to say, listen, there's enough of a connection here, especially given that, the allegations seem to be that some of this ammunition from her hotel room or that from her possession made its way onto the set. So I think
I agree with all of that, but let's just not talk about, let's say it's not even cocaine. Let's say she was drunk out of her mind, blind drunk in the hotel room and playing with her ammunition. Well, how does that tie to, again, the set? I think that it was wrong. It's just, in my opinion, I do not think that Carrie actually proved that connection. Now, if she proved that Hannah drunkenly grabbed a fistful of the ammunition from the room and took it with her to work. It was commingling it. Yeah, but I didn't hear any proof of that. I didn't hear any tie of that. Just that she was irresponsible.
Not the trial yet, right? It's not. This is whether or not it's enough to be a live issue at the trial. It's not going to be proof beyond a reasonable doubt at this stage.
I guess. I don't know.
I have a question for you guys. Do you think that the removal of the filter that was put on there by the police constitutes a second search and seizure? Or do you think that that waiver extended to the entirety of the phone and whatever was searched and seized in the process of? I mean, explicitly, it tends to imply that, but it doesn't state that specifically. I just wondered what your thoughts were.
Now I got to pull up the document and just see what all was agreed to.
Steve barely says anything, so I want Steve to answer.
No, I think you have to know that, like Ian said, you have to see the document to know that. It's a good question, but that's pretty fact specific.
And by the way, Jason Bowles, that wasn't the only time he slipped up. I can't go into details, but you do know that Seth had a civil complaint. Hannah had a civil complaint against Seth Kinney that has been dismissed. They withdrew.
When was it dismissed?
For a couple of months back, but I can't go into full details. It can maybe off the record. But anyway, let's just say that some mistakes were made by Jason Bowles that potentially could have blown the whole thing up, allegedly, or I heard.
Was there a counterclaim in that suit?
No counterclaim, just completely dropped, completely bye-bye, disappear with prejudice, asked to remove with prejudice.
Wow.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah, it kind of flew under the radar because there's, all the other lawsuits that were going on, like the Alec Baldwin Hutchins lawsuit, which they settled out of court, and the husband became an executive producer on the film, which did get completed, by the way. The film, I don't know if it's been completely edited, but it has been completely shot. I'm not trying to make a pun, but all the filming is complete. And I believe it's going to be released at any point. Watch them release it at the same time as the Alec Baldwin trial. But I don't know. It is really, 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 really very interesting. And then we still have, God, I forgot her name, the very famous LA lawyer who goes after every freaking case, Gloria Allred. Yes. So the case against Seth Kinney wasn't a Gloria Allred case. Gloria Allred's case is still out there. So I think she overshadowed the Hannah versus Seth case, if you will.
And guys, I had to step away for a second, so I apologize.
Oh,
Did
sure.
you guys touch on the fact of the defense saying, well, we finally found an expert, and the judge says, denied, you're not bringing that expert in?
Yeah.
That's also generally when you can't find an expert, that's a tacit admission that either A, nobody wanted to work with you, or your theory is not very, very good, and nobody wants to stick their neck out for it.
Well, there already is a quote expert on the witness list.
Well, Daddy, but
yes,
yeah,
who happens to be probably the biggest expert in the field.
Yeah, sure,
so
but also your daddy. Yes,
Hmm.
yes, I am.
Yeah.
So it's like that's gonna kind of ruin that.
I mean, Daddy may not be qualified as an expert on that.
Yeah.
On that
But
basis,
also, it also then it becomes, Mr. Reed, would you be doing cocaine while you're on the job? No. I mean, like,
well, Daddy drinks a little, but anyways.
Yeah, but
yeah, there's a little difference between drinks a little and
riding the white stallion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to be fair, Ian, it's not only cocaine; it's also weed and alcohol.
Oh yeah, no, there's the full package there.
She has a variety, and
the devil's lettuce.
And she did. Let me just say, there's the other charge where I guess she bragged about being able to bring a weapon into a bar by pulling it out, saying, "Look, they didn't see it." Anyway, she has some issues. I don't know what's going on.
I found the search document. It's just to do an extraction of the phone, but there's no time limits or place limits or anything like that. And once they've done the extraction, I don't know that it is another search to do a different filter on it, because they do a full extraction of the phone, right? So they probably extracted from the phone and then gave the phone back. And,
that makes sense.
And then it's just, it's like if I take 20 boxes out of your house and search 5, it's not another search if I open, and have another look through the other 15 later.
Not.
Yeah, and Twisted Puppet, I do agree with what you were saying there, and that was my issue with the case, is that everything that she stated or that they said was outside of work. It's at the hotel. It wasn't there. I'm not saying it's good stuff, but I don't feel like they conclusively tied it. I'm really surprised that Carrie managed to get that through.
But what's the standard? I mean, if the standard is a little bit lower and you don't have to conclusively prove it, you just have to show, that this is our going theory that she was likely intoxicated on set, or
but
at
that's
least
a propensity argument.
Runs.
That's a
and I forget
think
how they got past that one, and I don't remember what the argument was to get past it. But they did.
I don't think they have.
Well,
I don't think. Well, they don't have to present all their evidence yet, but I don't know if it's. They didn't make it clear how they're going to present it, and I think that's a problem for them, because there was no blood draw, there was no she seemed intoxicated, which I think is really.
Well, they did have. Hold on, they did have the text saying that she was hungover like on other days, and this is the problem. We're kind of just throwing a lot of things in there, but I didn't feel like they did on that day, because I know they definitely had the text. I believe it was between Sarah Zachary and Seth Kenney. This is why Seth Kenney is such a big deal to stay in, because Bowles said he is literally the primary witness against them. And I've seen texts that went back and forth between Seth Kenney and Sarah Zachary and things like that. But again, not on that day. And that is the issue that I have with that. And even the judge, I don't know that saying, as you said earlier, Ian, that he was leaning that way. I kind of feel like the judge is about to rule that way, and somehow Carrie Morrissey managed to just barely squeak it through.
That was my read as well.
And that Sleepy Bowles just kind of fell apart on it. Actually, it wasn't Bowles arguing that part. It was the other lawyer that on that. And I don't know. I just that one didn't feel right to me. The second thing, yeah, fine.
I think part of it is that the prosecution's making a decent case that the negligence involved isn't just a one-day thing. It's that the ammunition was seen on multiple days. And so the setup for that could be on, could be 3 days prior, because the question is, when does this ammo get there? How long is it there? They say that they've got a picture, video of Hannah handling what they say they can determine to be live ammo.
There's pictures of the live ammo that I have.
Yeah. But apparently they have it in her hand.
Yeah, well, it's actually an Alex strap in her hand, in the box. I mean, there's multiple places that in her bag. It was completely commingled.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that she doesn't notice this and she's handling this live ammo, I'm shaking my head. Bowles was making an argument in those hearings that I was like, wait, this is your argument at trial? Because this should convict you. And his argument was, hey, it's impossible to tell the difference between live ammo and a dummy. And if that is the case on a film set, it means that the armorer is incompetent and dangerously incompetent, because it should be possible to tell the difference. It should.
Well, to be clear, Ian, I think you were saying it's very difficult to tell the difference visually.
I was going to say, to be fair, they did find
visually, and they do strongly resemble each other, and that's why you have a dummy round, is so it appears like real ammunition is being loaded.
The thing is,
we're not talking about the shake.
They strongly resemble each other unless you examine them, because I've got some dummies right here. You can hear the rattle here. Mm-hmm. They got no primer on them. And the ones that do have a primer have a hole drilled in the side.
Right, which are they shouldn't have a primer and a hole, and that's the whole Brandon Lee case. But that's a
well, I mean, if they have a primer, it'll be a killed primer, right? So the primer is just not functional. But then they'd put a hole in the side so that you can visually tell. You're supposed to be able to tell in multiple ways how this is a dummy, and so it's either the punch primer or the hole or both, and the rattle, because that's how competently made dummies are. And
yes,
if you don't have those things, if you have a dummy that cannot be visually distinguished, that should not be on a film set.
Yeah.
Well, here's the problem too: is this is why Dave Halls had to plea out. Is he stated he only saw 3 in the gun, and it's very difficult to tell in the gun itself as well. I mean, God, there's so many problems with this case.
If he was picking up a gun that he hadn't himself, like that had just been sitting there, he should have pulled every round and checked.
Right.
What
Well,
I
I
suspect,
specifically, and I did specifically talk to Seth Kinney on this subject too.
Yeah.
And he did say that, no, you shake the son of a bitch. That is the only way to absolutely, and that's the only kind that he will work with, is with a BB.
Yeah, but you should be doing that with each round.
Oh, yes. And the whole routine of, she showed me 3. And by the way, that's the really creepy part, is that she had just loaded that in. And when she was showing him the 3, she may have actually been loading up that round.
Yeah. And
it's chilling.
You know, I spoke to an armor earlier today. Everything gets checked, and it should be getting checked over and over and over, repeatedly. It should be that there's no, the idea of a live round should never be a possibility on a set, but you still check obsessively, because that's the whole point of this. And just too many corners cut.
Well, and you're actually, and to be fair on that, you're not even thinking live round, as in a piece of ammunition that has a real bullet in it to fire. You're thinking blanks are live rounds on a set usually. So, and you're trying to make sure that you don't have a blank in there versus a dummy. The fact that there was actual ammunitions, period, they should have nowhere been near that set in any way, shape, or form, correct?
Oh, absolutely. There's only basically one circumstance where you'd have live ammo on a set, and that is the very, very unusual circumstance of where you're doing Mythbusters, where the whole point is that you're showing, you're doing high-speed photography of a bullet impact. But the procedures for that, you'd never mix and match that with this kind of behavior where you're pointing firearms, or that would never occur on a Western as well. Those would be very different sets. And the armorers I talked to basically said, if they're doing that, they've got live ammo in a locker, and it's the armor walks up to the locker, takes out a single cartridge, puts that in a locked box, walks it to the thing, loads one, and is and if you didn't get the shot, then they're going to do that again with the next one.
Yeah, and it's literally fire in the hole type of stuff. I mean, clear the entire set. You have only the cameras, and the Mythbusters, I know they did an episode where that happened. And I think another example might be testing the angle or trajectory of a shot that killed JFK or something with water bottles, that kind of circumstance. I think is about the only time you'll ever see live ammo.
Yeah. Well, that and the firearms they were using should never have been touching live ammunition, period. So when they took them out to go somewhere else to go plinking, they weren't doing that on set. Those guns should never have been they shouldn't have been running ammunition through those. Everything they did.
Well, allegedly, we haven't gotten proof about the plinking. I'm just telling you right now that.
Yeah. Okay.
That is an accusation that is out there, but it has never been proven.
Okay.
Although one thing I thought was interesting is apparently this gun was very new.
It's brand new. The receipts. I can probably get a copy of the receipt to show you. It was bought specifically for this and delivered directly.
And then when you actually see the forensic reports, they said it was so fouled
because she didn't clean the guns
that it was actually constricting the bullets as they were fired.
Yes.
Like it was narrowing their diameter. And I'm going, that's really filthy.
Yes.
And black powder is disgusting.
Yes.
Like it's noticeable on a firearm too. It's not like, oh, you'd have to no. You can, it gets covered in crud.
But there was also, I think, like lead fouling in there. And that I'm going to want to recheck. But if there's lead fouling, there should never, like that should never have been.
Well, if you're shooting, but if they were shooting, wad cutters or anything lead bullets, it's going to leave lead fouling in the barrel.
Well, but there shouldn't have been. That's the point. Right. That proves
that
plinking,
reinforces
maybe.
the notion that they were playing with them. But,
right. That implies that plinking may have occurred. I was going to say, hasn't been conclusively proven yet. I know for a personal reason that it hasn't been proven yet. Anyway, anyway.
I'm sure that draws in the more people to the story if that ever gets proven.
I think it's entirely possible, but again, very strong allegedly on that. And I also was told, ironically, because there was a conflict about her having 2 jobs on the set, she would wanted to clean guns on a day she was supposed to work props or whatever it was. But apparently she didn't clean this one very much or at all. Mm-hmm. And that's why the round, it was so fouled up. Remember on that day, Ian, because you've been through all this, right?
Yeah.
She couldn't get it in there and had to brush it out to put the live round in.
You have to jam it in the chamber.
Yeah. So it's so frightening to consider all these circumstances that went down for this to happen. Like a big one being the camera crew was not on the set because of a dispute and safety. So they left. Part of the camera crew was a Video Village person. Video Village is what the DP would stand behind to look at the shot that is framed. But because they didn't have the Video Village operator, because the camera crew left, the DP was now inside the church with the camera. If the camera crew was there, Helena Hutchins would be alive today. And ironically, the guy who quit and who went on Good Morning America, Lane Looper, if it went down, he would have been the one who was possibly shot because he was the focus puller and would have been the person next to the camera at the time that they were framing the shot for Baldwin. Do you guys know about all these weird little circumstances?
Yes. Yeah. The whistleblower would have died, very likely.
And I think that's part of the reason he has come out so strongly, because if I was in his position, I would feel like, oh my God, I lived, she died, I would have died. It would mess with your head.
The number of just small issues that had to overlap to create this one giant issue is tremendous, because any of these there were so many opportunities for this not to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And at every time they just screw it up. And I'm going, oh my, how is this a thing? So
yeah, it's so disturbing all the way around. But on that note, need to wrap up, and we'll start with Steve, who has just been talking our ear off as usual the whole time. What do you have coming up?
I was just sitting there thinking about how nasty that gun was and all of that, and a lot of lead in it, because you'd have to fire that someday. I mean, a lot of 45 long Colt, if that's what it was, you'll get a lot of lead in it, but still, that's bad evidence if you're the defense, huh? So, but anyway, what I'll be doing probably is watching somebody's channel on this Fanny thing, because I got to see what ends up happening on this situation we spent an hour discussing, because that's crazy.
I totally agree. Sean, what do you have going?
I think, I was thinking about tonight trying to, because I didn't get a chance to do it yesterday, watch Fanny from the beginning. Although I was thinking about really focusing on Nathan Wade and Fanny, or Fawny, doing it all. Sounds like you're from Sweden when you say it like that. doing that for the beginning, and then trying to catch up with today. Also the probably tomorrow night. I'm still trying to figure out the order of things. The transcript from Brian Laundrie's father, his deposition got released, and reading through that, it's the first 50 or so pages are kind of like blah, but when you get to the point of like Brian saying Gabby's gone, and he repeatedly tells them that Gabby's gone. Where'd she go? She's gone, and it does not paint them in a very flattering light with their lawsuit against the Petito family. So it's very interesting to read. I'll probably be going over that tomorrow at some point.
Cool. Danny, what do you have going on?
Well, I covered the Fannie case yesterday, and I'm not going to correct my pronunciation, but I covered that for like 9 hours, and I covered the other case, the missing mama case, for an hour before that. And so I'm trying to decide today whether or not I'm going to do Michelle Troconis today, which that case is finally heating up. It's getting more interesting. They're starting to tie up some loose ends. It really is like a slow burn murder mystery because they don't have opening statements. And so, sorry, go ahead.
A slow burn's a joke. I've been covering it too. It's 19 days of nothing, and then finally things happen.
Yeah, basically that. So, things are happening though. So we're getting a little exciting, there's some excitement there. So I think I might cover that one today. And then wrap up Fannie Willis tomorrow and do a review of the Michelle Troconis trial day yesterday, which was 21, tomorrow as well. So it's exciting. We're doing a lot of new trial coverage, and I hope to get some shorts going here real quick off of my Law for Deity Valentine's Day stream, because we talked a lot about family law, and I think that there's some good things to learn regardless of jurisdiction that I think will be helpful for people. So
cool. Ian, what do you have going on?
So I'm going to be doing a lot of the rest coverage. I'm not sure if I can clear my schedule. If I can't, I'll be doing it as like evening recaps. Because I'm keen on this trial. I've got about a dozen gunsmiths who are telling me I got to say this or say that, or sorry, film armorers saying I got to say this or say that. I've also been following this drama with a lawyer called Jeanette M. Braun. She is suing a bunch of influencers for saying mean things about her and a client. But the real fun thing is that she and her client are co-plaintiffs on this defamation suit, which is an interesting move. And there's also allegations that she and her client working together made false wellness checks. So, that would be a crime fraud exception. She's testifying in another thing. So privilege is all over the place. It's this giant mess. And this is just getting so disastrously messy that I'm really enjoying following it, because it's a wild ride. So check that out, because I can't figure out what's going to happen next in this one.
Well, Rumble,
she's a plaintiff and also the person's lawyer on the same case. That's exciting.
So she's their lawyer on the sort of lead up. They now have another lawyer for both of them.
Okay,
but she's plaintiff, like co-plaintiffs with her client beforehand, and I'm like,
gotcha. Yeah.
Oh God, this is going to be such a mess. The privilege arguments are going to be wild.
When you mentioned the wellness check thing, that's just call it what it is. She's basically swatting people at that point.
Yep. And if she and her client, like if that's found to be criminal, and if she and her client work together on that, that'll blow up privilege in the whole thing. And they'll get to go through every single bit of communication. And it's going to be so much fun if that happens. So I'm excited, because I might be watching a lawyer destroy her career in real time.
Ooh.
And yeah, it's rare that you get to see that from the beginning.
Wow. All right. Well, folks, and if you like this kind of stream, every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern, never know what's going to come up. I'm debating if I might stream the Rust trial here I don't know, because I cover it on America's Untold Stories. I'm kind of involved with it. We've got a legal show here with a lot of different lawyers. So please comment below if you want to see it streamed here or not. And we'll see everybody next week.